Hello, and welcome to a special edition of the Cyber Hero Adventures Show. We know that the only time that people hear about cybersecurity or hacking is when the criminals win. Well, not anymore. Our mission is to shine the light on the unsung cyber heroes who toil in anonymity to keep us safe online. Our special guest today is Eric Escobar, Principal Consultant, Adversary Group at Secureworks. Eric is going to discuss how cyber threats infiltrate your ecosystem. Hi, Eric. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Gary, how are you doing?
Terrific. It's so great to have you here with us. And the first thing I want to ask is, what is all that cool stuff behind you in those bins? What do you got going on there?
Oh, gosh. I have a little bit of everything. Let's see. I have my lock picking set. I have some of my ham radio gear. I have my key card duplicators. I have a bunch of different types of access points. I have a little bit of everything. Raspberry Pis, you name it. Yeah, I have a lot of different tools that with the trade right back there.
Well, I think that kind of leads perfectly into my next question. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do at Secureworks.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm on what's called the adversarial team, or the Secureworks Adversary Group. And really, my whole goal is to break into our different clients and customers just for the sole purpose of making them more secure. And it's basically like pretending to be a bank robber and then telling the bank how I broke in and how I was able to steal what I was able to steal. So it's one of the best jobs in the world, because on any given day, I probably commit a couple hundred different felonies that if I didn't have permission to do what I do, it would probably be several hundred felonies in any given day.
That is the first time I've heard anyone say that out loud. So good for you. But obviously, you're one of the good folks. You're white hat hacker for sure. So what are some of the common weaknesses and ways you've been able to breach in a company with all those tools and things? You must have some incredibly interesting real life stories.
Yeah, gosh, it's funny because you see all my tools and everything that I have back there, and you think like, man, like, what is he like? He must use all these on a day-to-day basis. But really, it's not quite as crazy and as sexy as Hollywood would make it seem. Anywhere from just guessing people's passwords. Companies typically make individuals change their passwords on like a 90-day basis, right? And so guessing summer 2021, fall 2021, August 2021, like those passwords get me in almost all the time if they don't have a robust password policy. And just guessing those passwords, and if they don't have multi-factor authentication, then gives me my first beachhead into that company, and it's really hard to kick me out once I'm in. So it's not something that you would think is particularly difficult, but yeah, that's one of the common ways that I get in.
So it's pretty widely understood that folks need to change passwords on a routine basis and using multi-factor authentication. Do you see kind of the world starting to adopt better basic cyber hygiene? Or because from some things that I've listened and learned about, these seem to be the same problems as 10 or 20 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, I think overall things are getting better. There's always room for improvement. So I mean, it's definitely one of those things that when you look at like major breaches that have happened, sometimes the common denominator is just systems that somebody leaves a company, that host gets forgotten, and then after it gets forgotten, it doesn't get patched, it doesn't get any updates, and then it's a ripe target for somebody like me who's going to look from the public internet to try and breach it. So a lot of times it's really common ways that just something not being patched, or some traditional phishing campaign. You click on some malicious link, and then all of a sudden, bam! I now have full control of your computer, and that's that first beachhead, my first way in. So I think things are definitely getting a lot better. I see a lot more multi-factor authentication. I see a lot more patched hosts out there. I think slowly companies are realizing that they don't want to be, on the frontline news. They don't want to be in the papers. They don't want to, be on Twitter as being compromised. So I think companies and even individuals are taking it a lot more seriously and using password managers and good passwords, and really taking security advice to heart. But again, there's it's just the same way that people are told to wear a seatbelt. Everybody would say, hey, wearing a seatbelt's smart, but yet plenty of people don't wear seatbelts. So that's the low hanging fruit for somebody like me.
Indeed, and there was recently in the state of Florida where I live a hack to a water treatment facility,
Yep.
and what subsequently seemed to come out, it was actually a remote access, legitimate remote access tool that when the person left, they just didn't shut down. Is that accurate? First of all,
Yeah, I believe so. I think the tool is TeamViewer, and totally legitimate tool.
right,
You know,
right.
I've used it. I've used it from time to time, and it's just one of those things that like with many tools in many ways that a hacker gets in. They're using what's available. They use the low hanging things that are available and accessible. We call that living off the land. If you're an adversary of just, hey, you use the tools that clients provide you, or maybe not clients in that respect, but like that a victim would provide you, so you use what's accessible. If that's remote desktop, if that's TeamViewer, if that's any other tool, you use whatever you can to get in and breach it. But yeah, in that example, it wasn't some super sophisticated 0-day that came out. It's just, hey, an open terminal that was left open, or shared credentials that somebody emails back and forth and says, hey, this is what you need to get in, and all it takes is for one shared password for one misstep. And honestly, like my benefit here is that defenders, they have to take every system into account. They have to take every loophole, every vulnerability, every exploit. They have to be up to date on the news. Me as
Right.
a hacker, I just have to find a single way in. I just have to find one single thing that they forgot, one single door that was left unlocked, and then after that, I typically have, in my opinion, an easier job. I only have to find one way in, and then it's really hard to evict me from your network. Whereas a defender, they have to be on top of it 24/7, 7 days a week, from all countries, from all public IP addresses. They have to be very aware of all those things. So yeah, it's a wild world out there.
Yeah, indeed. And so, just to build on that a little bit further, what are some of the steps that an organization can take to deter threat actors?
So I don't know if you've ever heard the anecdote of, when you go camping with your friends and a bear walks into your campsite. But when you're a company that's trying to be more secure, it's a little bit like that anecdote where, you see a bear walk into the campsite and you start, putting your shoes on, and your friend looks at you and says, hey, you're never going to be able to outrun that bear. And then you look back at your friend and you say, I don't need to outrun the bear. I just need to outrun you. And that's true, right? Like hackers are lazy. Hackers want to find the easiest, juiciest targets, and they want the most bang for their proverbial buck, or really their time and their tools. And so if there are 100 companies out there that they can compromise in 10 minutes, they're not going to waste an entire week when they can get, a far greater bang for their buck. And so when companies say, like, what can we do to be more secure? It's really, adding things like multi-factor authentication, adding things like strong passwords, adding things that don't sound crazy. Keep good logs. Make sure your employees aren't sharing passwords. Just general things that everybody should be doing. Whether they work in a large company, or just for their own, like, Apple ID or Gmail password, right? And really, at the end of the day, if you enable just even the base level of security options and use good passwords, you're going to be far better off than 95% of the rest of the other services and hosts and companies out there. So there's really no magic to it. It's just you don't have to be faster than the bear. You just have to be faster than your friend, really, at the end of the day.
It's interesting. You said so many really important things in that. I just want to unpack that a little bit. So it seems that, at least from a communications perspective, that when a breach is announced, or by a company that they've been hacked, the first thing you hear is a sophisticated, maybe nation state, high level, advanced, attackers. But really, what I'm hearing from you, and let me check this, is it really, like, primarily human error?
Yeah, I would say a large portion of how breaches happen are due to human error. I think that's, you're always going to have a nation state that's going to have a 0-day that's going to be, I don't want to say indefendable, but or not defendable, but that's not really who's doing, I would say, a majority of the hacking out there. It's going to be, normal ransomware crews. It's going to be normal, adversaries, and just, bad actors on the internet. And a lot of times it's way easier to hack a human and to trick a human than it is to trick a computer, right? If 100 times I were to try and submit a wrong password to a computer, it's never going to let me in. If I were to say walk up to a front desk and try and convince whoever's the receptionist behind that front desk, and try and convince them, hey, like I actually need to go back there to go fix something. If I had to do that 99 times, I can guarantee you at least once or twice that they would let me back into whatever that facility is, right? And that's because humans, overall, I think they're trusting and they want to help people. And hackers and malicious threat actors out there use that to their advantage, right? They prey upon those human weaknesses of fear or wanting to help. And you look at that from like phishing, for example, and you have some phishing engagement that comes out that's like, hey, you forgot to process this payment, or hey, your package was left on your doorstep, and everybody wants to click on those links and see what's there, and it takes advantage of human nature. And if it were a computer checking that email, you know that it probably wouldn't click on that link and submit fraudulent information. It would check the domain. It would look for all the telltale signs automatically. But computers aren't people and people aren't computers, and that's both good and bad. So yeah, I would say a lot of human errors involved. I would say, yeah, if you had removed completely humans from the equation, then computers would be a lot more secure. But then I don't really know what the purpose of a computer would be then.
Well, you're saying a couple really important things there. I mean, in a general sense, what you're referring to is social engineering.
Yeah.
For those in our audience that may not be, completely familiar with the concept, maybe you can elaborate on what that is and how it really works.
Yeah. So social engineering is basically, what a con person is. What that typical vernacular of a con artist is. Going back 30 years before computers were a thing, is you're just taking advantage of human nature and goodwill that's shared out. So if it's just saying if it's for example, social engineering could be, I might buy an AT&T Polo and have a clipboard and walk into your office and say, hey, I'm from AT&T. I need to go check in your back closet. It looks like your internet might be down. Who's going to turn that person away, right? Or if you want somebody to be really helpful, pretend to carry a really heavy ladder into a company, and everybody will hold that door open for you, especially put a hard hat on.
Wow.
It's going to let you in.
Have you done this?
I can neither confirm nor deny that, Gary, but I'm just saying people are really, really, really helpful. Or, phishing emails. So for example, we had a client and we said, hey, doctor, you can't practice medicine right now because you didn't complete your HIPAA training. We'll be in the office next week. And, but however, in the meantime, if you want to click this link that says, that you agree to the current new HIPAA rules, you can practice medicine this week. And so that doctor says, absolutely, I'm going to click it. I'm going into surgery here in the next couple hours. And when they click that link, it says, I, doctor, agree. And they have to sign in with their credentials. Well, guess where those credentials actually go? They go to me. And so now when that doctor goes into surgery, I'm impersonating him on the network, and I have hours of time that I can have my way with that network before somebody discovers what I've done, right?
Well, you're bringing up yet another aspect of this, which is identity theft.
Yep, absolutely.
You must deal with that quite a bit, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, when you look at it on its face, right? If this were 30 years ago and I wanted to steal all of the information from say a doctor's office or from an insurance company, or it could be like from an auto parts store, right? Like any one of these places, if I wanted to steal all of their client information, I would have to break in with a forklift and pull out file cabinets after file cabinets of personal information. Whereas now, if I break in, I can load it all on a flash drive and be out in a second. Or if I'm able to compromise, their perimeter remotely, I can download it all from anywhere in the globe, and nobody's the wiser. And and that's it. And I didn't have to actually even steal anything. I technically just copied it, right?
I mean, it's really appropriate also that you're talking about healthcare, because in the United States and around the world, the healthcare ecosystem is under attack with ransomware. Maybe you can share with our audience, a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, healthcare is also a really interesting and kind of a bummer spot. Because a lot of the technology that gets thrown into a hospital now, I mean, you see all the different, LEDs and screens and things that are all connected in some way, shape, or form to a network. And then you realize those are all like, to some degree, critical life care systems. And so you can never actually have, a solid pen test or security audit done of those machines because you can't take them offline because they're life support systems.
Right.
But then if they're never tested, you don't know what the problems are. And so then if a real threat actor comes and they don't have any moral compass or don't know or don't care, then they could easily take all those systems offline, and they were never tested. But how do you test the system that you can't take offline, right? And so you look at hospitals that especially during COVID, that get ransomware.
Well, wait a minute. How do you test a system?
So the way that I always recommend that we test systems that are critical infrastructure, or we also do testing on it's called ICS, or industrial control systems. So you can think of like, what releases water from a dam? How does a municipal well work? Or
the colonial pipeline attack.
That absolutely is. So what I recommend in that case is say, hey, set up a test bed. Give us a hospital room. Give us a system that's offline for a moment, maybe a redundant system, and let's do a real live test on a system that's not under critical infrastructure. But you can imagine during COVID, that's not really a possibility when every hospital bed is needed, right? It's really threat actors hitting hospitals when they're down. And I would even say, especially in the case of the Colonial Pipeline, that a lot of the threat actors, they're just going after the lowest hanging fruit. And really, from what I can tell, the threat actors that were going after the Colonial Pipeline, they had no, they didn't initially want to target the pipeline. They weren't the ones that shut down the pipeline. They just ransomware, some of the files and some of the hosts and computers that were there. And it was the operators of the pipeline that actually shut it down to prevent any damage from happening to it. But when you think about it, that's even more terrifying, that those hackers weren't actually even attempting to take that pipeline offline, right? And so it just kind of goes to show that potentially some of the threat actors that are out there aren't sophisticated. Some of them, are probably just teenagers, hanging out somewhere else in the world, that could take advantage of just some low-hanging fruit or an easily guessable password. And that's really the other kind of frightening piece about that, is that imagine if you had, somebody like me or a nation state or somebody who really had the sharp swords and the heavy weaponry, and they wanted to do something dastardly or bad, and they weren't here to make the world a better place. They're here to, try and ransom money, try and hold things, for ransom, for all the cryptocurrency, right? So.
Yeah, I mean, so that's another whole interesting sort of subtopic. I just want to refer back for our audience for a moment to, what an organization can do to defend against this. I mean, your point earlier was, I think, very enlightening and profound, that, an attacker only has to be right once.
Yep.
What do defenders do, or what do you recommend, or what are some of the things that Secureworks provides to help?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so not to get too deep into it, but Secureworks has a bunch of solutions, to help do everything from, like me, I'm the tip of the spear. I go try and break into these companies so that we can recommend solutions and fix them, right? And we also have capabilities, to defend against different attackers, to detect different attackers, and that's really what you want as like a company. Is you want to be able to detect when somebody's in your network and they're doing something nefarious, right? You want to be able to detect them soon and, potentially right away, even if they do breach your network. You want to be able to see, hey, are these common attacks and common things that attackers use to get in? Are you getting alerts? Is your system administrator, is he getting emails? Is there going to wake somebody up in the middle of the night? Because that's also one of the critical things that I find, at least, is that even if my attack set off a bunch of alarm bells, if I can go from, just a single user to a domain administrator or to like full compromise in about an hour, I can typically do that faster than somebody can wake up in the middle of the night and get to a keyboard to stop me. Right. Even if all the things go off, right? And so going back to what you said, having solutions in place that that have multi-factor authentication, you have strong passwords, you have alerting, you have monitoring, you have staff that are trained and knowledgeable. You do all of these things that none of them are probably super surprising or super shocking running simulations, running pen tests, right? And it seems kind of funny that you're asking like, oh, hey, pen tester, what do you recommend?
Yeah,
Like,
right. Yeah,
you recommend a pen test.
right.
But truthfully, right? Like that's why schools have fire drills. That's why, that's why you do testing on things. That's why cars have airbags, right? There's all these preventative measures that happen that are in place just in case, right? You get in a car accident and it's like, hey, guess what? Your car has an alarm. Your car maybe has OnStar to notify if you need help. You have seat belts to prevent you from being ejected out of your car window, and you have airbags to keep you safe and to cushion the blow. And those are the things that corporations and companies need, all under the hood. And that's honestly one of my favorite things about working where I do and doing what I do is that, I don't just walk in there and say, hey, everything's broken, you should probably fix it. Like we have solutions and recommendations that actually help, our companies and our customers out. So.
Well, what an outstanding analogy of the automobile and all the safety procedures. So, but I can imagine retrospectively that when people, first were said, okay, you have to wear seatbelts, people were grumpy, and probably slow to adopt that practice. And
Yeah.
I'm wondering, in the cybersecurity ecosystem, now that, people have been affected at the gas pump, don't mess with Americans' meat, from the JBS attack. Do you think there's a collective awakening here? We hear about cybersecurity almost every day now in the news across the social, political, and economic spectrum. Are we at some positive tipping point where people will wear their cybersecurity seatbelts?
I wish I could say like with 100% certainty that, yeah, everybody's taking this all seriously, but I also feel like that now it's almost background noise, right? Like if you receive an email that's like, hey, your company or your personal data was leaked in this breach, probably more often than not, you and I are similar in that, yep, like that's not a unique email that I need to go change a password or go change something, right? Like, shoot, how many people have LinkedIn accounts that have credentials that are just floating on the, the interweb?
Well, how many? Weren't there? It was some ridiculous number that were breached, like 100 million or something.
Yeah, and we have them. Like we have copies
Right.
of them from the internet. So when we go breach a client, I typically have several hundred of their previously used passwords that they used on LinkedIn, right? And so we collect those and scour the internet for those passwords, and we keep a giant database of passwords that have just been leaked out onto the internet, and we use them because that's what real threat actors do. That's what nation states do, and that's what gives us a huge edge in breaching a network. If I know, hey, these 5 passwords all belong to Gary, typically users are not sophisticated enough to really, change them up a whole lot. And especially having, like 5 or 6 passwords for an individual, you can kind of see if there's patterns evolving of like, hey, do they add a 1, 2, 3, 4? Do they add a year? Do they add their anniversary? Right? All this information that's publicly available, what do they use there?
Eric, I see that Secureworks is going to be at Black Hat, and the theme is real breach protection. How does your role feed into that?
Yeah, so like Secureworks wise, we have our Taegis platform, which detects and investigates adversaries or anomalies or weird things that you see in your network, and that would hopefully detect, somebody like me or threat actor like me. It would find them out. It would discover them, right? And then we have our incident response crew that if you do detect some anomaly or you do find a threat actor in your network, they'll parachute in, take the reins, and help evict that threat actor from your network. And then you have somebody like me, and what I do, I'm the tip of the spear. I'm the part of the adversary team where our whole goal is to breach networks. Our whole goal is to test your defenses and test your security solutions that you have in place, and make sure that that when we do something, you detect that activity, that whatever tooling that you have in place, whatever logging, whatever alerts you have in place, that you detect us when we touch the sensitive things, when we go after the proverbial crown jewels of your company, whether that's people's information, whether that's proprietary data, whatever it may be. Our goal is that you detect us, and our goal, at least from my side, is to be that adversary, to be that threat that does breach your company, and then all in the name of making our clients more secure, right? And it's honestly the best job in the world to do something like this, and you get to do all the fun, nefarious things, but all truly for good. So I don't know, that's my part of it, and it's awesome.
It does sound awesome. So, as we're wrapping up, can you tell our audience, how they can connect with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm not super on Twitter, but feel free to direct message me or DM me at Eric Escobar. I read all those messages as they come in. And then also feel free to shoot me an email. It's just escobar@secureworks.com. I'm generally pretty available, and I can talk about this stuff for hours and hours and hours. Gary, I think out of all the topics you brought up, each one of them could be its own full-on conversation. For an entire night or for an entire day of just talking about.
Well, forgive the interruption, but be careful what you wish for, because all of a sudden your phone's going to ring or your computer's going to ping or something, and I'll be asking you about something else.
By all means.
And on a personal level, before recording, you said something that really I am kind of wearing as a badge of honor now, unofficially, which is you said, "Hey, we could geek out." Did we geek out?
Oh
here?
yeah. I mean, just hearing what hackers do. Like, I don't know what's any more geeky than that. So by all means.
Oh, that's terrific. Well, on behalf of a grateful digital universe, thank you to Eric Escobar and all the unsung cyber heroes out there. Stay safe.
Awesome. Thanks, Gary.